One more interruption, I promise you, and we will hop back to 1977, as I told you we would. But, with SIRENIA, it's been a fun experience spotlighting this group. I feel quite honored to be recognizing them on the channel alongside many other talents within the music sphere generally, but ever since I first was graced by SIRENIA's talents several months ago, when I came to the Arcane Astral Aeons, the first free tracks, in fact, were my primary introductions to this group's abilities. Though I knew, again, I had suspicion they would be great upon my connection point of entrance being Mortemia, the solo project of member of SIRENIA, Morten Veland. And I figured based on his work and his visionary perspective in music application, I use that word in limited fashion. I've seen it attributed in other spaces, and I completely agree with it. The guy is a master, at least in score construction. Just on my origin thoughts of being introduced to Mortemia several months ago, in fact, or maybe a little over a year at this point, I had a good impression with SIRENIA, at least of what would develop, especially on the symphonic metal regard and the European attribution, because many of you know I love the European rock and metal space quite a bit. I can't get enough of it, highly addicted in terms of the artistic world. I just look for good art, especially in the music space, and Europe has always fulfilled me. And I love taking the first introduction path on this channel, and especially experiencing fellowship encounters of good music. For me, music generally, as I've said many times, is a first love in my life. And the pursuit of bringing it onto the channel in terms of an emboldened presence alongside of artistic languages has been a long time pursuit. And I'm finally making good on that and materializing that ambition through a fellowship effect of sorts, as we entertain the good work together. And from a divergence point of perspectives, right? Some of you I know are approaching on a grounded basis of familiarity with SIRENIA over a number of years that exceed mine, and others maybe are approaching on a first-name basis. And specifically, I'm making this video in both respects. Right, this was my decision, much like I said with Dim Days of Dolor, the ever interruption to our process going to 1977 and arriving at that destination path. For those of you who are longtime SIRENIA fans, I'm sure you'd be pleased to see there's an emboldening of what I originally envisioned in presence for this group of, more SIRENIA coverage. Let's enjoy more of their works together and talk about their pieces in greater depth, especially ones of such high regard that deserve such a showcase. But for those of you who are approaching on a first-name basis as well, I have an independent vision for you. Because I think back several months ago when I was first introduced to SIRENIA, and I do hope that in some way my coverage of good art within the music space propels you to take individual paths on your own, right? That maybe on a first entrance, maybe you enjoy the works that I've selected in terms of SIRENIA coverage with me. Maybe you go back in what I've previously published. Or maybe you just take the road down yourself. But if you're someone in an artist shopping mode and you've never gone down the SIRENIA path, let alone the European territory, this could be a fresh introduction on both respects, I hope to compel an interest with you in experiencing such beautiful works together, right? And we can have, admittedly, a bit of an unorthodox, manner expressed for sure, but that we're enjoying good pieces of musical craftsmanship in the way that I think they deserve to be featured, right? It's, for me, I like music being, again, a mutual presence. It's just not the same listening to compelling work on my own. I've generally, I'm not opposed to taking that process, but it means so much more to share in the interest of others, right? Especially since I've had great fulfillment in my desire to have at least some sense of company around me in terms of the groups and the genres that I tend to prefer. I don't have much company in my social circles at present, right? I've been a metalhead for a number of years. There isn't much cohesion in my personal relationships, and I wish there were. But with my comments section, so many of you sharing those points of interest, and it's been wonderful to have you in my company. So I figured with SIRENIA, in both respects, let's highlight this group even more. For those of you who are longtime fans, you get more coverage piled onto not only previous videos I've released, but as well with the evolution of 1977 that we'll come back to. We get to add on 2 more works, including, again, in consideration, Dim Days of Dolor, this being the subsequent planned presence. And for those of you that are taking a first introduction path to SIRENIA, this piece I chose specifically for you. I have heard it. I wish it were a fresh introduction. I wish I'd known about it when I'd been introduced to Arcane Astral Aeons. I would have recognized it at the time, and it could have been operating by the first impression model, but as you can see, this is a reintroduction. I've heard this piece, and that's sort of helped to influence me to showcase this on its own. And to take, yes, it's a bit of a weird structure we're on with SIRENIA coverage, in that I did start at Arcane Astral Aeons, we moved to Riddles, Runes, and Revelations, and we're going to be moving to 1977 in a minute, and the subsequent video. returning to it. But then we went back to Dim Days of Dolores. I took a rewind pattern, then to Arcane Astral Aliens, and now we'll be jumping again to 1977 post this. So it's kind of a zigzag pattern. I didn't plan it that way. Again, I wish it had been on the first impression model, so I could have shared in the experience to the fullest extent. But Queen of Lies is a particularly fun piece to showcase, especially to Sirenia's talents within the symphonic metal regard. And even more specific than that, Emmanuelle Zoldan as a vocalist, who has charmed me over the last couple of months that I've been introduced, and she's quickly become one of my favorites in the operatic metal regard. And some of you might remember my first introduction to this with Into the Night. That piece takes you aback, especially when you hear it on a first entrance. You're like, wow, this woman can sing. She's exquisite. And she's just another name in the European regard when I think of other operatic vocalists. Let's say, for example, Uli Perhonen, Ambro Vulvehis, Simone Simons. Emmanuelle has such a dominant presence. I love her range. The way her French accent interweaves is just so beautiful. But her lyrical delivery is exceptionally transfixing. Queen of Lies, like Into the Night, presents that operatic side at a higher inflection point. That's not always demonstrated on Sirenia's works. There is a bit of a mixture in choice of delivery, right? Quite a varied application. When I think of Queen of Lies, having another operatic instance, especially one of such great prowess, I wanted to recognize that one on this channel specifically as a follow-up to Into the Night, and at least with one more piece. I have heard of 1977 that it takes the album, at least in consideration of what will be entertaining. From what I've witnessed, too, in the first free singles that have been unveiled for it, that album does take a bit of a softer approach. On risk that the operatic vocals do not appear there in tone, and I hope they do. But, if not, I'm sure it'll be a fun album either way. But in case they're not, I wanted to just showcase one more instance. Not just for longtime Sirenia fans, and we can enjoy this piece together, and this is truly one of my favorite works of theirs, but for anybody who's approaching on a first-name basis, maybe this will compel you to go down the Sirenia path, and it will be an accompaniment to Into the Night, one that, again, I've been hoping for another opportunity to showcase Emmanuelle's talents on the operatic regard. This piece does that, and if you've not heard it before, get ready. I'm going to go ahead and cue up the song, and we can be introduced to it. Well, I've already been introduced, but you can be introduced to it alongside my replay experience. And of course, if you're not familiar with the way I format coverage on the channel, specifically in music focus, I do provide the lyrics for you to suit listener taste. So if you want to read along with the storytelling of the piece, that will be directly in the video feed for you, and it will transition alongside the song if we proceed through it together simultaneously. I hope you have a fun time with this piece. I know for you longtime Sirenia fans, you sure will. And I know I'm approaching this late. Again, I've caught up with Sirenia over the past couple of months from his selection. I will be diving deeper in their past library as well, pre-Visual Dawn era. That's the only time I spent an interaction with Sirenia, I believe. But in full, let's add one more piece, though, in terms of the interruption. Again, 1977 is next, as promised. But I couldn't ignore this piece at all. I just had to feature it. So prepare yourself if you've not heard it before. And if you have, you know exactly what I mean in terms of the power of this number. It's just such good music. One of Sirenia's best, in my opinion. And this just sets us running, my favorite opener by them. She is an angel. Oh, love this number so much. Trademark Morton. Oh, that guttural edge, I love it. Anything on the death vocal side. And then you have her to depart. Such a cool intermixing on style. I love the lightness. This piece is everything that's so attractive to me with SIRENIA. Again, as I said, I can't repeat it enough, one of their best. I love how dark this is. And the pacing of that work, just sticks in. I can't think of the last song that referred to me as dear. It's so classy. I just melt with that line on the inflection. You know, I was introduced to Morten Veland off Mortinia, as I said many times, but I know about the vocal side of the growl, but he's never gone that dark, from my knowledge. I don't even work the choir in. So perfect. I love the departure there with the syncopation. So effective as a closure. I really hope we get more of that on 1977. Or at some point, if it's not on that album. Again, I've kind of heard that it might not lean that way, but we'll see. I hope we get more of that in the future, though. And if there's maybe any numbers I haven't come across with SIRENIA that also feature that type of operatic reach, feel free to disclose them down below. At least, again, I'm thinking of stuff in those old dawn era, so from anything between Din Days of Dolor to 1977, I'd love to hear recommendations down below on that front, because I cannot get enough of it. I love Emmanuel so much. I'm so grateful to have been introduced to her. And I think back, in the course of my life, as I've said many times, I think back when I was a kid, I'm still, I think if I could go back in time and tell younger me, you will love opera someday, I probably would have laughed in my own face. But it's the metal scene in Europe that just brought such a love, in that respect for me. I've truly never heard a voice like Emmanuel's. It's so specific. Whether it's on the French accent integration, it's so dominant. I love hearing it. Or that higher operatic inflection with the vibration. Just, God-given talent and beauty when you hear it, especially on vocal delivery. And there's been so many in the European rock in a regard I give that attribution to. Emmanuel 100% qualifies in that. And I'm so grateful, by the way. And, her path of presence with SIRENIA, it's so cool to see, because if you don't know the backstory to her, at least just even in simple form, she was a former member of the Sirenian Choir, as that's their name. And she's now the front lady. She deserves to be, too. Just one of my favorite vocalists, again, that I've ever heard, quite frankly. And I would love to hopefully see more evolution done in SIRENIA's tenure and presence within the operatic regard. I love this number on structure. Its energy, its fierceness, the bold aggression. Many of you know I gravitate to that in metal immediately, so I love seeing it put in as a mainstay insertion and an influence here. And the procession of the work on the opener, it just sets the ground running. So good. Morten Veland just nails this piece in scope, but also the other band members at the time. I don't want to ignore anybody. I believe as well, I don't believe Michael Brush was active with the group at this time. I don't think he was. Maybe I thought he came on through Riddles, Wounds, and Revelations. Their percussionist. Nils Cobornon, I believe, was. I love the bass work here and the guitar fierceness, especially the aggression. It's just so good of a throttle. I love this album on Energy. I have to re-listen to the entire thing in full. Or not re-listen, I haven't entertained this beyond just the 4 tracks we've humored together. Just the aggression and the hard energy to it, I love immediately. As I said, opener, strong, and then to segue immediately from the death growls and to have this interplay between, we've got Morton Veland with that guttural edge, and there's just certain words that he nailed there. Hell, marionettes, I love how he uttered that. It's so good. It's matched with pacing and inflection. I love that. And then when you have Emmanuel come in and refer to the listener as dear, I feel so warmed. It's so European. Beautifully mature. I just love this piece in every respect. It's so crafty articulation, and I love seeing as well again that there's, I think to my knowledge, 3 instances apart from again a more melodic placement of her vocals on the higher inflections of the opera. I love the constant swings in, whether it be the break in the middle that segued into I believe that last verse, I think, or it was after the hell line. It immediately changes the mood, right? It's a nice disruptor, and that is the closure. That's what kind of takes you out other than that trailing drift on the music. It's just so good. I remember, again, the first time I had heard this in passing was just a segment that I'd seen on part of one YouTube video. That's kind of what compelled this, again, like I said, with the operatic regard. I was just skimming through, so I think someone put together a video of, Emmanuel going, note by note on range, and it was constantly climbing, and I saw we were reaching the operatic point. I did kind of fast forward, admittedly, to get to that, and right before we got to Into the Night, because I think it is increased on one note, or maybe I think it was a flat, or something like that it's increased by. This was the preceding number, and it was just on that segment alone, like, there's more on the opera territory, I have to listen to this. And again, I listened to it in full, and when I finished it, I was like, I really wish I'd listened to it with all of you. Again, I love the fellowship experience, and that's the route I've taken of SIRENIA. All of this has been first impression for the most part, other than, again, with exception, Dim Days of Dolor and Queen of Lies. I wish both had been featured with you again, that we could have discovered them together. But I'm giving you the next best thing, right? Hopefully, in some parts, not only embolden SIRENIA's presence here, and to have another enjoyment session on behalf of those of us who are SIRENIA fans, but, and again, many of you advanced me in your years of following and your familiarity with the group, I know, in terms of past eras. I'm going to take the deep dive myself pretty soon, but other than the 12 works I've humored, going on several more, we have 1977. They've had a substantial presence here. I love featuring SIRENIA. Again, I feel honored. I truly do. Because I really do hope that some of you are approaching on a fresh basis with them. And this track compels you to dig deeper. It's such a good work. I can't get over how good it is. One of their strongest, in my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on your opinion of the piece and whatever perspective you approach with SIRENIA. This is good art. And its finest. It's why I spotlight music here. I just love being in full reverence, and for a group like SIRENIA, I'm in constant adoration. And I know for many of you, you experience the same, or you will, for sure. I don't like to speak for anybody, but it won't be that hard with SIRENIA. If you're a new fan of theirs, you will find the process of following irresistible, I'm sure. But with such classy and mature delivery and sophistication, Queen of Lies just enamors. But again, specifically, in consideration, if 1977 does not feature any more points of documentation with Emmanuel's higher vocal range on the operatic, I wanted to at least feature one more piece, right, where available. And Queen of Lies, coming off of Into the Night, is a wonderful accompaniment. It's just so beautiful to hear it again. Now it's such a good first impression with that piece, but to have a reprisal performance with the same aggressive spirit, I love this work so much. And I hope you did too. An immediate re-listen, one that I knew would make for a fun mutual encountering with SIRENIA. Even though, again, I really do wish it was by the first impression model we were all judging this together. I give you the next best thing, in hopes that maybe this piece could compel you to go down the path of SIRENIA. If you liked this piece, you'll love everything else, at least from my judgment of what I've heard from them. But this is one of their strongest for sure. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.